A couple of months ago, I shared how I made this journal for me to practice my handwriting, and since then you've had so many questions about it, and I've learned a lot through the process. So I'm going to show you a flip through of the completed notebook as well as answer your questions and share some of the things I've learned. I want to say a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. There's a link to a 2-month free trial in the description, but for now let's get into this flip through. On the first couple of pages, I printed some different fonts that I could come back to quickly and use as reference or as inspiration for trying different styles. So whenever I'd want to practice a certain font, I'd first use some tracing paper to go over the text and understand how each letter is shaped. This helps get used to the different styles, and of course the more you practice, the more you're going to remember the shapes without having to trace anymore. I didn't fill out these pages in one sitting. The purpose of these was to practice each letter a few times before writing longer pieces of text. So I didn't go through this notebook in a chronological order. I'd go back and forth between practicing individual letters and writing text. I mostly wrote random quotes, poems, pangrams. A lot of times I just opened a random book and copied whatever text I could find. I didn't practice every day, and when I did, sometimes I'd write 2 whole pages and other times I'd just write a quote. There's this kind of silence in your mind that you experience when you have to focus on something, even if it's as simple as learning how to write in different styles. And while this may seem like a complete waste of time to someone else, it was actually very therapeutic for me, especially during these times, because in order to write properly, I'd have to go very slowly, really focus, and be present and intentional with every movement. It came pretty naturally to me to get used to the cursive style I was trying to achieve, but keep in mind I've been writing cursive my whole life. It's the only style I learned in school, and we were actually not allowed to use any other type of writing utensil except for the fountain pen. So anyways, I even tried faux calligraphy, which I'm going to show you how to do as well, but I was pretty happy with my progress. However, when it came to writing in print, which to be honest was the main reason why I started this journal, I felt pretty confident while I was practicing the individual letters, but the first time I wanted to practice writing some text, I hated it, and I got frustrated and discouraged, and I pasted the pages together so there would be no evidence, which I now regret, but it was just one of those days, so I didn't try again until later on. It just goes to show that everyone's progress will be different depending on what you're already used to. So anyways, I started over and I practiced the letters without using any reference because I just wanted to see what I would do naturally and what I had to work with. So I wrote this text and I had to go super slowly, and while it is pretty neat, I wasn't being very consistent with the size and the shapes, and it just didn't really feel like me. So then I started experimenting with different sizes and styles, and I also tried to mix print with cursive, and I was just trying to figure out what I liked best. I still couldn't really decide, so I did an experiment where I wrote as fast as I could while keeping it legible, and I noticed that I have a tendency to slant my writing, so I think that's the style that I want to go for. Now I'm at a stage where I'm still experimenting and I'm trying to find a print style that I feel like is mine, if that makes sense, because I'm still very new to it. The next couple of pages you're going to see in just a minute, but on the last pages I wrote a piece of text back in April when I started this journal, and now I copied it in my neater handwriting so I could see the progress. Some of you were saying that you lose your individuality if you're trying to change or improve your handwriting, and I do agree to a certain extent. However, I can still write in my original handwriting. I don't think that's ever gonna change. This is just something I wanted to learn for when I do want to write neatly, and it was also relaxing to do. I cannot stress enough though how slowly I was going, so please don't be discouraged if your progress is different. More than anything, I want to inspire you to try and to keep practicing, because no one was born knowing how to write neatly. Before I get into all the tips and answering your questions, I really wanted to mention one of the Skillshare classes that was a huge resource and inspiration for this video. It's from Doris Fulgrabe, and she dives into not only the mental benefits of handwriting, but she also shows you how to take your own individual handwriting and implement strategies for better form, legibility, and speed. You can also see real-life examples of her guests' handwriting and how she's helping them achieve their goals, which was really interesting and encouraging to watch. Skillshare actually has a ton of classes on handwriting and calligraphy, as well as thousands of classes on other creative topics including illustration, design, photography, and more. It's curated specifically for learning, so there are no ads, and it's a very supportive online learning community, which makes it the perfect platform to use creativity as self-care. The annual subscription is less than $10 a month, but the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership. Alright, so now let's get into all the tips and questions that you had. I just want to put it out there that fancy supplies don't automatically improve your skills, so please use whatever you have. The fountain pen you've seen a lot in these videos is the Lamy Studio LX with an extra fine nib, which is my favorite. It's pricey only because it's limited edition, so the more affordable fountain pens I really like are the Lamy Safari, the Pilot Metropolitan, and the Muji fountain pen. The ink I've used throughout this whole notebook is the Aurora Black because I love how rich the pigment is. It's one of the blackest inks you can find. I do wish it was archival though. The notebook I used is a traveler's notebook insert with a dot grid and a brown cover. I created the clear stickers in Photoshop, and unfortunately I can't share the files with you because I don't own the rights to those fonts, but I will link the fonts down below and you can make your own stickers or practice sheets. If you don't want to spend time on that, the easiest way is to print out practice sheets that you can find online. Most of them also have guides to trace the letters until you get used to the shapes, and then you can practice on your own. You can also print text in any font that you like and use tracing paper to practice, just like I showed you before. So everything that I'm talking about or showing in this video will be linked down below, including the stamps and sticker paper that I used in this notebook. Many of you were wondering how I was writing in a straight line. That's just because the notebook has a dot grid that's barely visible, but it's enough to provide a guide for writing straight. If you're writing on blank paper, then you can use a grid underneath, and if the page isn't super thick, you'll be able to see the guides. Another option is to use a piece of paper by aligning it to the edge of your notebook, using the top edge of the paper as a guide and moving it down as you go. You can also draw a guide for the first line of text and then use that one as reference for the line underneath, and so on. A lot of you also asked how I'm writing center aligned, so I'm going to show you. Usually the longer the text, the easier it is because there's more room for error, but I'm going to show you with a shorter quote. So first, I imagine a center line going vertically through the middle of the page, and then I try to divide the text in my mind into somewhat equal chunks, and in most cases, I usually make the first line a little bit shorter. Again, if it's a long text, you don't have to worry about this. So because the first line is a little shorter, I start writing closer to the imaginary center line, and I stop writing once these two distances are equal, because that obviously means that it's centered. I start the next line a little further out because I know it's a bit longer, so you do kind of have to estimate how much space each line is going to take. Here I kind of miscalculated and I had to write the last word in its own line, but you'll get better with practice, and like I said, it's a lot easier if you have more text to work with because you can start each line completely randomly and just stop at the same distance from the edges. Faux calligraphy is a technique that uses regular pens to imitate the look of calligraphy, where you can see that contrast between thick and thin lines. It looks best on larger text, so I usually have to sketch it out just to make sure I have it centered and that I like the lettering. The first step is to write like you normally would, whether you're tracing your sketch or writing freehand. Then all you have to do is go back and thicken the downstrokes for each letter. So for this L, if I recreate the motion, I can see that this is the part where my pen is going downwards, which means that's the line I have to make thicker. The I is pretty much a downstroke itself, so I thicken that up as well, and then I continue that for each letter. If you're having trouble figuring out which line is the downstroke, just recreate the motion you're making while writing the letter and pay attention to the lines where your pen is going in a downward motion. It does take a little bit of practice, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to do it without thinking about it. I've learned so much while using this handwriting journal, and I've only scratched the surface in this video because I'm currently putting together a more in-depth video on literally everything I've learned so far, from basic handwriting techniques to improving the handwriting style that you already have. If you want to deepen your handwriting skills even more, I will link some of my favorite Skillshare classes down below that you can start watching with your free trial. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye guys!